Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, but you probably already knew that. So this week for the unit build, we've got something a little bit different. This is a bit of a hear me out scenario, okay? I can see that you're probably thinking, is he mad? Yes, I probably am, which is why I continue to make these videos. Let's just have a look at a what if scenario for a second. Okay, I'll admit I haven't come up with a name for this one. And I've been trying to come up with a name for this build for just about a week now. So I'll try and scram something in at the end of the video. If I haven't, I'll just make something up on the fly for the little picture thingy and the thumbnail. Anyway, this build. Okay, so we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago in my Discord. And this is an MBT that I personally use. Now, I can hear what everyone's saying because I hear it over and over and over again. Cheddar, that is a trash MBT, why would you use it? Okay, so to clarify, obviously the MBT is not currently in my lineup. When it was, this was the unit of choice. So there's a couple of reasons why this MBT is good, and this is a bit of a hear me out build. So I'm going to explain it through the tech, the advanced and the modern, as always. I'm going to explain it through the unit stats, the parts, the officers, and its trained skills. So as always, guys, make sure your headphones are in, you have a snack to hand, and you have a drink available, because as always I have no idea how long this is going to take. Make sure your missus is watching The Vacation or whatever it is they like to watch, those chick flick movies, because we're going to dive into a really different build this week. This is going to upset a lot of you. This is going to upset so many people. Okay, so this build is built around a specific scenario, as are most of these unit builds. So let's assume that you're going for a min-max of the camp prestige bonuses. Now, as you know, you need to have so many of each type of unit, and then all of the bonuses kick in. And once you reach a level 4, for example, of one type, you get 15% intensity, 15% damage resist, and that's for 5 martyr, for example. And then you add that damage intensity and resistance bonus to, say, the 2 level, the level 2, where you have 3 of, say, Liberty or 3 Vanguard. You get the point. So you have a free slot and you would like to use an MBT, but the free slot is a martyr slot. And let's say you have your base set up and your strategy set up how you would like. And this is just going to be a free unit. How best can we use this unit? Okay, let's have a quick look at the unit stats to see if we can get some indicators as to which direction we would like to go with this. Okay, so we have increased HP for using the Martyr MBT. We also have a repair, which is handy out in the field once you're outside of combat. As we know, combat can last for a few minutes, it can last for a few seconds, and if you have a very violent, very kinetic combat, then there's going to be casualties and those units are going to need to be replenished. Also means in between bombing runs, if there is no air cover, your tank is going to be last on the list. It's going to be very hard to kill because by the time they've sent a bomber out, hit it a few times, you're going to regenerate that HP. This is why the repair bonus is pretty handy. So all MBTs come with their blast damage resistance, and they're all all-rounders. They're good versus vehicles, fortifications, etc. And we'll look at this at 8.1 cap, as always. I know I'm no longer in Silver 1, but this is a good basis because I have quite a lot of the 8.1 units, so I can show you the picture as well as the stats quite effectively. So we have a pen depth of 243 and we have a sloped of 249. But really, we're interested in the HP. The HP is 613. It says that it's got the highest in the stats that are available, and it has the lowest amount of firepower. So how much lower is it really than the opposite on the Vanguard? Well, the Vanguard has the same penetration depth, but this has a much higher sloped armor, and it has a much lower HP per unit. Its firepower is 1.02. That's not much lower than this tank. Now, admittedly, some tech may come into play on this screen when it comes to, say, in terms of military. So if your military tech tree isn't completely maxed out, I'm not entirely sure if that is going to play into this, and if so, by how much, because mine is not completely maxed out in terms of Vanguard and Martyr firepowers. So bear that in mind. That is a caveat, but from where I'm sitting at this moment in time, you're dropping quite a bit of HP for not that much in terms of firepower. It's fairly close, let's be honest. So why would we want to use this tank? As I said, we've got a gap to fill. How can we use this tank? Well, I think the tech might give us some indication as where we can go with this. I know I'm being extremely vague, but that's because if I blurted it out at the start, you'd be like, this guy's nuts, this is never going to work. And we had a very long conversation in Discord about this. We believe this might work. I've tried part of it myself, and the results were fairly good for what I was being able to produce at the time. I digress. Let's have a look at the tech. As always, we'll look at the advanced tech first, we will look at the two pictured techs, and then we'll look at the tech worthy of note, and we will describe where we can perhaps use these towards the end. Okay, so when a medium tank or main battle tank enters combat, we get a firepower increase of up to 15%. So you know, that loss in firepower that we just saw is compensated for a little bit. Obviously, if you're up against another MBT, that's going to be slightly harder to deal with. And of course, we're looking at a critical strike rating of 5% and a critical strike damage bonus of 50%, bringing the critical strike damage to 200%. With a flat 5% chance of it being used. So this is going to be a very combat heavy unit. I mean, it can go into AGs. We're not going to really use it to defend the base all that much in terms of its utility, because the super heavy is better than that. You know, the super heavy is superior in terms of utility for base defense, whereas if we've got this in defense, we're going to want it to deal damage, let's be honest. So the first stat I want to bring up is penetration damage. This is what we like to call foreshadowing. This goes up to 10%. Automatic loader, very, very nice. HP bonus. Now, there's a very good reason why I'm about to mention the HP. And the HP is the main stat for the Martyr tank. By the end of this video, you'll understand why I'm interested in the HP. But for now, I need you to just bear with me. The HP is very important. Don't worry, we're not tanking enemy bases with this. A damage intensity bonus is going to be key in all fields. Tank firepower is needed, but we're not really looking towards the firepower too much. we're mainly concerned in the HP. And here again we get a nice bonus with the firepower that can stack up to 3 times for 5% a piece with a 40% chance every time the unit attacks. Now, as always with the modern tech tree, we are only assuming that you are getting to the halfway point because the modern tech tree takes so long. The damage resist bonus is going to be useful for what we want to do with this tank. The tank HP is going to be what we're really after. We don't need the blast mitigation bonus, except for its minimum. But the tank pen damage is a priority for completion. We do need this quite heavily. And of course tank HP and the tank firepower, but it's not like we need this as much as the pen damage or the HP. Now those who watched the previous video might understand where this is going already, because we're now going to go look at the parts. I think it's best that we start with the main gun, because there's 2 choices. You have firepower, load time, and pen depth. You have firepower, load time, and firing accuracy. We're not interested in the firing accuracy barrel. We're interested in the pen depth barrel. Quite heavily interested in the pen depth barrel as it happens, which at a base stat without the bonuses of a wrench sits at giving you a nice bonus of 9.2. We'll come right back, because with that 9.2 we're going to add that to the nat 243. That gives us a 252.2 on your pen depth. Which is now higher than the extreme opposite. And that's before wrenches. Now, I cannot remember off the top of my head, so please correct me in the comment section if I am incorrect here, because I do make mistakes. I've made plenty over the year and a half I've been doing this, and you guys catch them from time to time. Now, I'm fairly confident, about 95% confident, that the barrel on the MBT is affected by the wrenches, and the more wrenches you have, the more those substats get increased, which means this higher armoured, lower HP tank is now quite close to being within your sights. And to make matters worse, just because your pen rating is below the overall armour of the unit doesn't mean you cannot pen it. Pen depth. The ability to penetrate an enemy's sloped armour. Armour penetration greatly increases the damage dealt. The higher the penetration depth, the easier it is to penetrate the target's armour. Not guaranteed, the easier. If a troop's pen depth is far greater than the target's sloped armour, it runs a risk of overpen. We're not interested in overpen, because when it's a tank-on-tank battle, the chances of an overpen are fairly slim. But it means we're in with a shout. Now, again, with the armor slot, we have 2 options. We have the HP, and we have the blast mitigation. We're going to need this. We only have one option, HP and troop speed. So, that's what we're getting on. But for maintenance, you get 2 options. You get the firepower, and you get the HP and garrison recovery rate. We're going to need the HP. So, we've got a penetration rating barrel, which can be potentially increased with wrenches. Which brings us within a good shout of being able to hit and penetrate reliably the Vanguard MBT. We have a lot of HP. How is this going to work? Okay, so for the captain, we're looking at Rapier. The reason why we're looking at Rapier is because we're going to try and levy some of that critical strike rating and some of that critical strike damage. Now, normally I do the 2 officers one at a time, then go back and do the train skills. We're going to do the officer, explain the reasons why we're using that officer, and then we're going to put the train skills on in order this week. I want to try it a different way round so it's a little bit easier to edit. If you guys hate it, I'll change it back. If you say nothing, I'll keep it this way, if it's easier to edit. So his tactical skill gives us a damage coefficient of 1500, which we know is playing off the firepower stat, which we know is not going to be as great as other MBTs. But we get a bonus critical strike rating for 10% for 8 seconds, which goes up to 20%. Very nice indeed. We also get increased firepower buff of up to 30%. Obviously it's not in a light tank, so we're not getting that bonus of the additional bonus of 20%, but we don't really need it. This one is quite important for 2 reasons. One, it gives us a normal attack buff or a normal attack boost of 15%. So this is like damage intensity specifically for your normal attacks. This is quite important, and this is primarily the reason why we're using him, because we could train this skill in, but we don't want to, because we also want the awakened skill. Critical strike of 20% as well, so that gives us a nice flat 20% combined with this being a bonus 20% for 8 seconds combined with the 5%, which means we're already, before we go anywhere, sitting at 45% for a critical strike rating off a normal attack. This is where the thing starts. This is where the whole thing starts coming together. The enhanced skill for the main attack, obviously for the when he's awakened, we get bonus critical strike for an additional 400 coefficient. Sorry, I need a drink of tea. That's better. Whenever this officer's tank or helicopter troop lands a critical hit with its normal attack, it increases the damage intensity by 5% for 8 seconds. This effect stacks up to 5 times. We're getting massive amounts of damage intensity here. At maximum stacks, the troop deals additional skill damage whenever it lands a critical strike. So this is for prolonged combat, and it will be very good in defense, and it will be extremely good in army groups when you're smashing against each other like 2 conkers in a playground. You know, deals additional skill damage when it lands a critical strike of up to 400 coefficient. This effect can be triggered once every 4 seconds. While in a standard cycle, we're looking at 8 seconds to 10 seconds once you include the 2 seconds for the aid. So 8 seconds is a fair estimate, which means you're going to get about 800 additional coefficient out of him for this. Now, that's every time you land a critical strike. You've got to remember, you're pumping 45% with just him. That means one in every other shot is going to be a critical strike. What skills do we need? So the first skill we're going to go for is Death Adder's pen damage. We get a pen damage buff of 40%. Then we're going to stack this one for 15% additional critical strike. bringing our critical strike rating total, including the main skill, from 45 up to 60. That's quite important. So this is what the officer is going to look like, and that is going to be absolutely nuts. 60%, amazing. But we're not finished yet. So for the aid, we're going with the classic, tried and true anti-tank legend himself, Golden Eagle. The very selfish man I proclaimed to hate originally, I seem to be finding more and more reasons to use him. I think I might have to change my review on this officer, because as time has gone on, I've seen the absolute value of having him. So obviously we're interested in the tactical skill here, because it gives us a 1500 damage coefficient plus an additional 80 for every 100 millimeters of armor. So if we're up against the top end MBT for armor, which is the Vanguard, we're getting an additional 160 coefficient straight off the bat just for having him on there. That's nice, but that's not the reason why we want him. We're getting a damage intensity bonus, which is going to play into our strategy with this tank. We're getting a 10% critical strike rating, which means at a flat rate, we're getting something like 50% flat and 70% buffed once the first tactical skill is popped off. So as you can see, that is going to enable us to really ramp up those critical strikes and allow Rapier's awakened ability to just pop off constantly, which is just going to be nuts. More importantly, we get a unit resistance buff as well, which is going to be quite nice, although it's not that important. And this is what we're really after, as is always with Golden Eagle. Whenever we use Golden Eagle, this is the reason why he is good. It increases the normal attack boost. Remember, we had that earlier. And it increases the officer's troop normal attacks by up to 20% and ignores up to 10% of the enemy's damage resistance, and that can stack up to 15%. I'm not sure how it stacks up to 15%. It's never really said. All we know is that you can ignore a flat 10% of the enemy's damage resistance, which lends towards perhaps you being able to use things like damage intensity more. But we're not using damage intensity. We're not using damage intensity at all, are we? The sharp ones amongst you've probably already worked it out. We're not going anywhere near damage intensity. Oh no. The first skill we're going for is Maestro. A normal attack boost. See that? A normal attack boost, which is going to be your normal attack damage intensity buff, basically, and a pen damage buff of 40%. That gives us a total of 80% for your penetration damage buff. 80% bonus when you penetrate an enemy target. And you've got to remember that when the target penetrates, it's more of a case of if it's rolled against the penetration rating is rolled against the sloped armor rating. It's not a guaranteed hit every time unless you are over. It's not guaranteed to be deflected if you are under. So as long as you can penetrate a target, you have a penetration rating effectively, you have a chance to penetrate. And the last skill we want here is the balanced skill from Uncle, which is increase the firepower of this officer's tank troop by up to 10% and the HP by 30%. Now you can get this skill from other officers if he's not in use, but it is going to vary. This is obviously a min-max build specifically for this tank, and we're relying heavily on the HP. That is what we're after more than anything else. The reason why we're going for a balanced rather than a defensive for pure HP is because just a tiny bit extra firepower is going to lend our way, but it is not a priority. The priority is the HP, but we don't necessarily need this. As I said, we could just simply swap it for an HP based stat. So how does this atypical tank work? Well, let me explain. This tank is designed with a couple of goals in mind. Out in the field, when it first engages, as we know, it gets a 1000 shield coefficient. Now, this has a very low fire output, it has a very low sloped armor, so we're going to utilize that HP to its maximum extent. The opening engagement between the two tanks is going to be fraught with extreme danger. This is where we can mitigate this by having a higher than normal HP. And by having a very high amount of HP and a very high penetration rating, what we're effectively going to do is once those shields are dropped, hopefully we're going to have a tactical skill ready to go to increase our critical strike chance, which is going to be at a 200% bonus, and then we're going to have a penetration that can go through on top of that. Now, can the pens crit? I have no idea. I'm pretty sure they can, but it only ever shows you the pen name or it shows you the crit name. In either case, it's not too much of an issue because this thing is going to be lethal to pretty much 2/3 of the main battle tanks out there. The only one it's going to struggle with is the Vanguard MBT, and that's why the critical strike rating and damage intensity from the normal attacks is so important, because that's how we're going to use this tank to destroy the Vanguard MBT with a higher armor rating. The penetration damage on this thing is going to be enough to take on any Liberty tank and any Martyr MBT out in the field. This tank is designed for you to roll it out, send it into AGs, and just for you to leave it there and forget about it if you so wish, because this thing's going to pull weight. It's going to roll up to another tank toe to toe with a huge shield on it, because you've got to remember that shield is coming off the back stat of the HP. The coefficient is multiplied by something, and I've always assumed it to be run by the HP. The tests that I've done in Arena have indicated as such, and the higher the HP, if that's going to be a multiplied against 1000 coefficient for 5 seconds, you know, tank on tank, this thing's going to be difficult to beat. I'm sorry, it just is. We're using a lot of critical strike ratings, so the normal attacks, they're going to hit hard, especially hard. We're using a lot of penetration. Again, the penetration damage is going to skyrocket. We're going to see a lot of damage coming off the back of that. And to top it all off, we have a little bit of utility from the critical strike bonuses through the coefficient from Rapier. Obviously, once he gets a max stat, he's then going to start blasting off critical strikes left, right, and center. And on top of that, it's every time he pops one off every 4 seconds, you're going to get a 400 coefficient bonus. You're going to get the additional 160 coefficient bonus as a result from having a Golden Eagle. So other tanks are going to get punished. This, when I said this was a trust me bro moment, a hear me out moment, I wasn't joking. This is a good build. This is a very good build. Is it going to save your base? Probably not. Is it going to be brilliant attacking an enemy base? Not really, because you're sacrificing firepower and intensity in favor of a penetration based hit. So this is really predominantly out in the field, going toe to toe, one-on-one with other main battle tanks. Could you change this build to make it even better? Probably, if you're prepared to sink money into the game. Remember, all these builds come from a free-to-play perspective. I'm never showing you any officers that you've got to sink money into, and I'm never showing you any officers that you need to use for the lounge, for example. An absurdly long period of time to get or cost in terms financially in order to unlock and use. This tank will be slow. It will not be easy. It'll be very easy to avoid. It will not be able to catch up to anyone that's trying to get away from it. But that's the thing. You want to make people think this is not something they want to drive away from until those penetration and crits start coming in. And when they start coming in thick and fast, oh boy, are they ever going to think, what have I just stepped in? This tank is going to give you the ability to punch back if you're busy elsewhere in the battlefield. If you want to use this in more of a traditional chase down an enemy unit role, single manipulation, it's probably not going to work. It's because of the penetration damage. Again, we're focusing quite heavily on that. It's going to hurt artillery regardless because it is a tank, but it's not going to hurt as much as some other builds. This is going to really, really ruin other main battle tanks. Trust me on this one. If anyone out there is brave enough to try this, let me know. You've just got to understand the stats that you've been given and how to levy them. This thing is basically going to go toe to toe with another tank, and it's basically going to get hit a lot. That's why we've stacked the HP. That's why we're going to keep pumping the HP stat as high as we can. The whole point of this tank is if you keep getting hit, it can keep taking hits and it can still dish out punishment from its main barrel at a good rate. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. I know I don't normally do the format in this way, and it is a bit backwards, but I needed you to understand where we were going with this as we were going along, so when I gave you the explanation here at the end, it would make sense. Because if I just said at the start we're going to make a AG based main battle tank with its main stat as HP, its secondary stat as penetration damage, and we're going to focus on pen damage upgrades for the barrel, you'd just be like, has he been eating lead? No, I haven't been eating lead. That is just... This is just how... Look, just trust me. Just trust me, this tank is bloody deadly. Okay? Just understand the stats you've been left with and understand how you can manipulate them, and more importantly, understand how you can utilize them. That's the whole point of these unit build series. It's not necessarily to give you a whole unit for you to copy and build, although you can do that. That's exactly also something you can do. You know, the primary role of these videos is to give you the ideas, to show you the thought process, to show you how and what stats you should be looking at for what particular scenarios, and how you can levy them with the units you've got and your play style. Now, if you do have this tank and you want to try that build, I've done the hard work for you. This is going to be a good build. I will stand by that. I will die on that hill. This has taken a rather long time to talk about because tanks, now I know MBT tanks, they're hit and miss when it comes to whether or not you guys enjoy them. I very nearly went down the road of an ATG this week. I changed my mind. And if you have any ideas of what you want to see next in terms of builds, let me know on Discord. A link for that, by the way, will be in the description box down below. As always, you're more than welcome to come and join the Discord. There are some rules. Please give a pizza to the rules. Be sensible. We do trash talk an awful lot. I try not to police everyone's speech. But I do appreciate it if we stick to the rules. Or the rules on the rule page. Now, unfortunately, this week I have had to ban someone for repeatedly breaking the rules and then subsequently deciding to make a threat. That won't be tolerated. I have a limit. that person found that limit, which is a shame because I kind of like that person, but it is what it is. Please just stick to the rules. I don't ask for a lot from you guys. I don't even ask for likes. But if you come into the Discord, just stick to the damn rules. We will bully each other. That's fine as well. Take it in tongue-in-cheek as what it is meant to be. And if you don't like it, you can always leave the server. As always, guys, I've been the Smoking Cheddar and you've been very patient. Be sure to drink your drink, and if it is a hot drink, I hope it hasn't gone cold. Remember, you are a human being, not a piece of wood. You need to drink water. Please drink some water, guys. Please drink some water. And I leave you with that tank. I have not just. Maybe there is lead in the water around here. I'm not sure about that now.